I'm 29 years old, but it feels like I've lived an eternity. I've been living at home with my mother for as long as I can remember, and the days blur together into one long, gray haze. The factory, where I've worked for almost 10 years, is the only constant in my life. I can barely explain what I actually do there anymore, but it doesn't matter. The work is monotonous, but it's the only place where I feel at home. There, among the machines and the constant hum, I feel surrounded by something that truly understands me. The factory speaks a language no one else can comprehend, a language only I can hear. Inside, between the cold metal walls, there are no judgmental looks or whispers behind my back. Just silence, a silence that somehow affirms my existence. No one has cared about me in a long time, neither at work nor at home. Mom mostly sits quietly in the living room, usually in front of the TV, staring blankly into the distance. She doesn't say much these days, and when she does, it's as if she's talking past me. As a child, I tried to understand why I was so different. When the other kids played, I stood on the sidelines, watching as their eyes quickly flicked toward me, and then away again. I remember how they whispered behind my back, but I could always hear what they were saying. He's so strange. I was 8 when I first told my parents that I could see them, the shadows, figures that drifted through rooms, invisible to everyone else. But my parents didn't believe me. Not then. Not later, either. "It's just your imagination," my mom would say, her soft voice meant to calm me, though it only made me feel even more unseen. Dad was more direct. "You have to stop this," he once muttered sternly. "People will start to think you're crazy." And they did. After I began talking about the shadows, I lost the few friends I had. School became a nightmare of whispers and averted glances. After Dad's death, the loneliness deepened. Eventually, I went silent too. I stopped mentioning the shadows. I disappeared into my own mind. But now, in the factory's darkness, they're back. The shadows, the whispers, they move between the machines, flickering at the edge of my vision. Every time I try to focus on them, they vanish. But I know they're there. They're waiting for me. I sigh and run a hand over my face. I'm tired. So tired. My therapist said it was signs of schizophrenia, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But I know better. I know what I see, what no one else can see. The village has always been a part of me. Once, it was full of life and work, bustling with movement and opportunities. But that was long ago. The factory, which once supported the entire village, is now just a shadow of its former self. There are hardly any jobs left, and the village grows quieter with each passing year. It feels as if the place is slowly withering away, just like me. In the past few weeks, I've felt myself growing weaker. My body no longer responds the way it used to, and the exhaustion is nearly unbearable. At the same time, the figures I've seen for years have become clearer. They're no longer just shadows flitting by at the edge of my sight. Now, I can hear them whisper, almost as if they're speaking directly to me. Their words are hard to understand, but they're there, present in a way that makes me uneasy. One night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard them clearer than ever. One of the figures leaned in, and its face, which had always been blurry and indistinct, suddenly became sharp. "We are the recently dead," it whispered, with a voice that made the entire room feel colder. "We are passing through, but the others, the ones you see around you, the ones who look real, they've been here for a long time." I shivered. I didn't understand what it meant. Was I supposed to believe them? Was this just another hallucination? A sign of my illness? Or was it real? The days went by, and each time I went to the factory, it felt like I was slowly losing my grip on reality. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a stranger, a man with dark, empty circles under his eyes, pale and sunken skin, as if sleep was slowly draining the life out of me. Neither my mother nor anyone at work seemed to care about what was happening to me. No one reacted when I tried to reach out, and soon I began hearing whispers, not just from the shadows, but from the people around me. One day, on my way to work, I heard something that made the hair on my arms stand up. Two passers-by, strangers I'd never seen before, stood a bit further down the street, talking in low voices. "What does he do at the factory every day?" I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. What did they mean? What is it that I don't know? The thoughts swirled, and an icy feeling crept over me. It was as if reality was slowly cracking, as if something terrible was lurking just beneath the surface, and I was about to see what it was. Curiosity drove me to my computer that evening. I typed in the name of the factory, and at first, everything seemed normal. But then, I noticed there was no modern information about the factory. No website, no contact information. All I found were articles about the factory, which had been built over 100 years ago. A page with the title, "We Remember Our Ancestors," spoke about the factory's heyday and how it once supported the entire village, but had since fallen into ruin and been abandoned long ago. It was as if it no longer existed. But I go there every day. How is that possible? Panic began to rise within me. What does this mean? Is someone fooling me? Am I really insane, like everyone has said? My thoughts raced. Just as I tried to process what I had just read, I heard a soft knock on the door to my room. I froze. "Mom?" I called out uncertainly, but there was no reply. The door creaked open slowly, the hinges groaning like a warning. There she stood, my mother, silent and staring. Her face was expressionless, her eyes empty. I couldn't remember the last time she had spoken to me. Was it a week ago? A month? How long had we lived together without really seeing each other? I swallowed hard and whispered, "Mom, what's happened?" She finally spoke, her voice low and whispering, like a faint breath through the room. "It's time to wake up, my son. You have to face the truth." Her words hung in the air like a weight pressing down on my chest. Face the truth? My mind raced, scrambling to piece together what she could possibly mean. I opened my mouth to ask, but my voice was caught in my throat. She was still standing there, her eyes locked on me. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I managed to speak. "What truth? What are you talking about?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned slowly and walked away, her footsteps barely audible on the creaky floorboards. I wanted to follow her, to demand an explanation, but my legs wouldn't move. It was as if I were rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a fear I didn't fully understand. When I finally found the strength to move, I stood up and made my way out of the room. The house felt colder than usual, the air heavy and thick. I called out to her again, but the only response was the distant hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She had disappeared. Wandering through the house, each corner felt unfamiliar, despite having lived there my entire life. Something was off, as if the walls were closing in around me, hiding something I couldn't grasp. Finally, I reached the living room and froze. There, in her usual spot in front of the TV, sat my mother, silent and staring. The screen was off, but her eyes wasn't fixed on it. She was staring blankly at the wall. With my heart pounding in my chest, I approached her slowly. I reached out, my hand trembling, and gently touched her shoulder. The moment I made contact, she blinked and slowly turned her head toward me. For an instant, her eyes looked different, distant and cold, as if she were seeing right through me rather than looking at me. "Mom?" My voice was barely a whisper. No response. "What truth?" I repeated, my voice trembling now. This time, her lips parted, and her voice was softer than ever, almost inaudible. "You'll find out soon enough." Suddenly, my vision flickered. One moment I was standing in front of her, and the next, I saw blood. Stains of old, dried blood everywhere. The walls, the floor, like a haunting imprint left behind for years. My heart raced, but before I could process it, the image disappeared as quickly as it had come. Everything returned to normal. I blinked, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. But she was already turning away, walking out of the room without another word. I was left standing there, frozen, unsure if what I'd seen was real or just another trick of my mind. The next morning, I woke up feeling numb. My head was heavy, and my thoughts moved slowly, as if trapped in a dull fog. Memories from the night before drifted through my mind, disjointed, unclear. Had it all been a dream? My mother's strange behavior, the sight of blood. Everything felt so vivid, yet now it was distant, like fragments from a fading nightmare. I stayed in bed for a moment, staring blankly at the ceiling, until something caught my eye. The clock on the wall. Damn, I'm late. I threw myself out of bed, panic bubbling in my chest. The dream still spun in my head. Or was it really a dream? I rushed out the door and hurried down the street. At the factory gates, I stopped. For a brief moment, it felt as if reality warped. Suddenly, the modern building transformed into an abandoned wreck. I saw an old sign warning that entry was prohibited due to life-threatening risks. I shook my head, trying to regain focus, and rushed inside. The cold air in the building made me shiver, but I pushed the discomfort aside and made my way up to the break room. Inside, it was silent. I dropped my head onto the table and wrapped my arms around it, as if I could protect myself from the world outside. "What's happening to me?" I mumbled to myself, but soon fell silent. Where is everyone? My thoughts took me back to my childhood. Small fragments of memories began to resurface. I remembered the happy moments before I turned 8. How close I was to my dad. I remembered the smell of freshly baked cookies that my mom used to make, and how her soft voice always made me feel safe. The more I dug into my memories, the clearer they became. I remember how my dad warned me not to tell anyone about my secret, how everyone would think I was crazy. I recall that he wasn't alive when he said it. I remember the years that passed after my dad's death, when I found my mom dead on the couch. She couldn't go on without my dad, and she saw no other way out. I recalled the few friends I had, and how I lost them one by one. I remembered telling a friend, "Ghosts are real, and they talk to me." I've talked to your mom. I made him believe me when I told him a secret that only he and his mom knew. A sudden noise made me jump. I looked around and realized the break room was in ruins. Everything around me was old and worn, as if time had stopped and brought dark secrets with it. The air was thick with dust, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Memories flooded back. I realized why I was here. I felt my heart sink as I understood that the factory didn't exist, and that I wasn't truly suffering from schizophrenia. I was alone everywhere, yet I continued to go to a job that didn't exist, a task that existed only in my solitude. It was all I had left, an illusion that kept me afloat in a world filled with darkness. As I looked around, I understood that I was trapped in a nightmare from which I could never wake. I don't think I want to wake up from it.